Hey, movie fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Uncharted Media Podcast. This is episode 72, Worst Movie Sequels of All Time. Ironically, almost a year to the day after we did our best movie sequels. We didn't plan this way. It just happened to be, hey, we should do this topic. I was like, oh, we did best movie sequels. When did we do that? Oh, look, this is perfect. We almost did it a year ago. So it was great timing. Josh, how you doing this week?
I'm hanging in there, man. It's been a week. It's been a weekend, but we're struggling. I'll get on top of it eventually.
You have any shows this weekend?
I did. I had one. It was a lucha show, and weirdly enough, for some reason, no promoter talked to each other. So there was, I think we counted 5 lucha shows within 10 miles of each other. So we had like 15 people at our show.
Alrighty then.
And me and my buddy had this great match planned, but then we were just like, you know what? Screw that. So we just went out and just beat the crap out of each other and just entertained and just worked the crowd. There was an old lady that wanted to kill me by the end of that match. It was great. I was really happy about it.
I've got this weird analogy of just how there's Subways on every street corner. That's how I'm picturing it right now, of just there's too many things in one small thing that you're eating into each other's business.
Yeah, it just didn't make sense, but it is what it is.
Also, off the top, this is the first. This will mean nothing to any of you at home because this is a podcast and you can't see. But as we talk, I always have a cup of water just so I can keep the vocal cords fresh. This is the first episode that I'm drinking out of an Uncharted cup.
Oh, I'm so proud of you.
It's a fancy time. I'm going to say right off the bat, this episode is going to have me on all kinds of emotional spectrum. Just forewarning now, I will go on a very happy rant and a very sad, angry rant. But I'm going to get the sad, angry rant first. That way I can kind of build up my energy again, because I know our first news topic is going to wipe me out. But before we get to the news topics, we've got some other house cleaning to do. Again, Josh and I have seen some movies recently. I'll be honest, we've seen very different movies. Josh saw an Academy Award movie. I saw a movie on Shudder. I think I win.
Yeah. I finally saw Parasite, which was interesting. I don't know how to say this, because I understand why it got an Academy Award. The acting is incredible. The the sets are amazing. The camera direction is awesome. The sound design, the music, awesome, perfect, beautiful. I think I had a few minor story issues with it. Mostly because I don't know if it knew exactly where it wanted to go at first, and then it kind of something happens, and then it's like, all right, cool. So we're gonna go full throttle on this. So it's good. It's fine. It's fine.
And then on the totally other end of the spectrum, I finally caved in as the horror fan that I am and got the year subscription for Shudder, which I think is $60 for the year. And so the first movie that I watched was one that was highly recommended, part of a trilogy called Hell House LLC. Does that
sounds really familiar to me, and I do.
So I haven't seen the other two yet, but they're in my watch list, and I need to see them very, 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 very soon if they're anything to go by the first one. So basically, it is a found footage movie, which is immediately going to turn off half the people, but it's done well. It's a found footage movie of these 5 friends that basically every year they make a haunted house, except this year they're setting their haunted house inside of an actual former hotel that was haunted.
Interesting.
And so things start going very badly, and it's actually really, really good. It's kind of like a little bit of Paranormal Activity, a little bit of Blair Witch, but believable characters that aren't idiots. They're all we need to do something about this, but the guy in charge is the one that keeps pushing the agenda. And they keep building up this tension of what's in the basement, what's in the basement, what's in the basement. And it's kind of framed around this like, not mockumentary because I always think comedy with that term, but like fake documentary about what went wrong. So it's kind of already, okay, we know none of our characters are going to make it out of this, but there's this whole legend around it and bad things are going to happen. They keep building it up, and they don't really show their cards, which I really liked. It's kind of like Blair Witch in that sense. And there was one part that genuinely made me jump of just like, oh, okay. It wasn't a jump scare. It was like gosh, that was scary because it was all like a in-camera scare. So it's a really simple setup of like, they notice some weird stuff of like clown props, like human-sized dummy props of clowns start moving on their own. And they don't actually move within the scene, but like a guy is just like, oh, what are you doing here? He like turns, look down the stairs, and then the clown's head has turned to face him now.
No, thank you. I'm good. Appreciate it.
It's all like in the same shot, and it's just Well,
dang, man.
It was really good. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the next two, if they're anything to go by.
Okay.
I unfortunately yesterday I saw a really bad movie, but that'll be for next week's, which segues us perfectly into a big announcement that Josh and I have. So, back in way back land, Josh and I's first experience doing anything video or audio or just anything movie related was doing a video series on the Uncharted Media channel. At the time, 17 movie reviews, doing 5 good things. Basically taking a notoriously bad movie and finding 5 good things about them. So, after someone's genius idea, it's neither of us will say that, someone's genius idea, we were like, that's a good idea. We are going to bring 5 good things to the podcast. So once a month, we're going to be taking a notoriously bad movie and finding 5 good things about it. Now, unlike the first time that we did this, we're going to go more just in detail and just kind of conversational, just like a podcast, as opposed to a shorter video form. And unlike the video form, Josh and I will at least attempt to have our own separate list.
The point being here is that originally in the video format, we'd watch it together and form the list together. Whereas we're watching it separately in our own time, and we're forming our lists on our own. Now, that again, like you said, that might mean that we might have some overlap because we kind of generally have the same kind of opinions about movies, for better or for worse. But yeah, it's going to be fun, honestly. I'm happy that we're bringing it back because I think it was one of the things that it was the first thing you and I did. And there still isn't anything out there that kind of does the same thing. Yeah.
I enjoy, you know me, I try and be optimistic, and some of these topics today, it's going to be really hard to talk about. But I like to be optimistic, and this gives us a chance to do it. We're not starting from scratch. We will be revisiting some of the ones that we did before for the video. So if you want to see some of the old ones that we've already done, we have a 5 Good Things playlist on the YouTube channel. Feel free to check that out. But any bad movie is fair game, even if we've already done it before. Case in point, we will be revisiting the very first 5 Good Things that I ever did as a video. We're just going to do it in podcast form. We're going to put our money where our mouth is. Our first episode on this topic is going to be Batman and Robin, and
that'll be difficult. It's going to.
I watched it yesterday.
It's going to be tough.
We're going to discuss it later today for our worst sequel discussion, obviously. Yep. I will say I'm conflicted with this movie, but not like I used to be.
Fair enough.
I'll go more into detail and discussion, obviously more next week, but let's just say from a filmmaking perspective, it may not be as bad as people make it out to be.
Yeah. Well, but when we were doing the 5 Good Things, that was something we kept finding was, especially when we did Nicolas Cage month, was like, okay, yeah, these movies kind of on a baseline are not good, but there's certain aspects that make them very, very enjoyable.
Yeah, I'll have a lot of thoughts, and might even say some good things next week about Batman and Robin. 5 good things, if you will.
Oh, no.
That's about all the housekeeping, I think, getting out of the way. Now, let's get into the news. So, typically around here, we like to do just movie and occasionally video game news. And yes, we'll talk about comic book movies or characters, but we usually aren't delving too deep into what's currently going on with comics just because that's such a niche market. However, there was a development that happened over the weekend that I think, and watching a lot of videos breaking it down over the weekend, this could have a huge and very negative impact. Like, the initial reaction is celebration, but the long-term ramification is very negative, I think.
Okay, so I think you obviously know more about this than
I deep dived into this really hard today.
Yeah, so go ahead and tell me what's going on, and we'll see.
Yeah, you're not
have any input on it.
There's a reason I put this first is because we're gonna need to get our energy back up after this. Okay, this is hard to hear for DC fans. At least the beginning part of this is great. So Dan Didio was like the chief editor, more or less the guy that was in charge of overseeing the story direction for almost all the DC comic universe right now. Nothing on the screen, but basically anything that was on the page, he's responsible for. So on Friday, he was either fired or he quit or let go with no notice. He was just fired. And the internet's reaction and my reaction was, hallelujah, this came 10 years too late. Let me explain why. Dan Didio has been with DC Comics as the editor since about 2010. And he's been, let's put it nicely, controversial to say the least. Under his tenure, storylines and all characters kind of had a darker and more gritty turn to them. He is the mastermind that came up with the New 52 in 2011. That was his baby, which admittedly, New 52 was great if you're a Batman, but that's because Batman is a dark and gritty character. Everyone else, not so much. Superman's stories went down the pike real fast. A lot of viewership and readership, yes, and initially spiked out of curiosity of what this New 52 was going to be like. After a few months or so, sales nosedived to the point that in 2016, they had to bring in the emergency script saver and our favorite guy, Jeff Johns, to do a more or less reset button again with DC Rebirth in 2016, which Dan Didio had no involvement on Rebirth whatsoever, which is why it was good. Rebirth got everything more or less back on track because Jeff Johns believes heroes should be hopeful and optimistic, whereas Dan Didio publicly has gone on record saying heroes shouldn't have happy endings and shouldn't have a happy life. He's the one that has more or less alluded to the fact that Lois Lane might be cheating on Clark Kent in the current Superman comics, that Superman is a neglectful and distant father to Jonathan, and Jonathan was trapped in space for a decade. I have issues with this. I'll go with idiot, because he is the one that in Nightwing 55 gave the okay of, yes, we need to shoot Nightwing in the head to give him amnesia and change his name from Dick Grayson to Rick Grayson and strip him of the title of Nightwing.
What?
Yes, that's currently what's going on with Nightwing comics. Is he goes by Rick Grayson, and there's 4 other people playing as Nightwing under his supervision. He's also the one that when the New 52 was launched, completely forgot about Wally West and completely ignored him for all 5 years of the New 52, just completely threw Wally West aside. Then, in Rebirth, Jeff Johns brought him back. Not only did he bring Wally West back, but he made him a central figure of the whole Rebirth storyline of fixing the timelines. So then, in a few years later, when Jeff Johns was more or less called up to the big leagues to work on movies as a producer with like Wonder Woman and Aquaman and whatnot, guess what Dan Didio started to do? Shifted things back to the New 52 direction. He did Heroes in Crisis, which revealed a certain speedster, not only as the villain, but as a murderer in Wally West. He really hates any of these legacy characters of like the backup characters. And so he's been running the company really more or less into the ground since Jeff Johns took over, left for the movies a few years ago. So basically, when Dan Didio's in charge, he's like, we need to go dark and gritty, and it's shows in sales, people genuinely lose interest. And DC Rebirth started off great. Like, there was hope, there was optimism, but as soon as Jeff Johns left, after he fixed what was broken to begin with, things really started to go downhill. Now that he's gone, the lasting effects are not quite there yet. Sales have been dipping dramatically, and he doesn't want to admit that it might be this dark and gritty thing. So what they're going for is next year, they're rumored to be resetting DC continuity again. With something called Generation 5 or 5G, in which case, Josh, I don't know if you have heard about this, but buckle up for this stupid crap that 5G is going to be. So basically, it's fifth generation of the characters you know and love will no longer be played or portrayed by the characters you know and love. You like Bruce Wayne as Batman? Well, screw you. He's not in this continuity anymore. He's not even going to be one of the Robins. He's going to be played by Lucius Fox's son. You want Clark Kent as Superman? Okay, well, that sucks for you. We're going to have Jonathan Kent in it as Superman now, and he's going to be gay. You want Diana Prince as Wonder Woman? Nope, not going to happen. So we're going to get more or less the young Justice League as the new continuity. And comic book fans in the little bubble, niche bubble that we are in, are just going, we can see the iceberg coming now of, you think sales are bad now. You pull this crap a year from now, you will have no readership. So here's where things get even worse, if you can believe it. The rumors out there right now are that Dan Didio was fired not by DC Comics, not by the people that own them, Warner Brothers, but the people that own Warner Brothers, AT&T. So he was fired by the people that own the people that he works for. That's how serious sales have gotten under his watch of the really high overlords that AT&T have noticed. And they seem to be wanting to push forward with this 5G thing, whereas what I'm hearing is Warner Brothers is going, oh no, we can see the writing on the wall. This is a bad idea. So right now, it is a ship on fire heading to an iceberg with no one behind the wheel. And at the rate we are going, I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth. At the rate DC Comics is going, and this may have just sped things up even more. As much as Dan Didio is bad, and he really should have been gone a long time ago, if we keep at the pace that we're going, there will not be new issues of DC Comics material at all within the next 10 years. We will get the stories that we get, and then that will be it. We'll still get movies and TV and whatever, but in terms of new comic book material, it will cease to exist.
See, okay, so here's the thing, and I think this has happened gradually for me. I have slowly drifted away from DC and Marvel, kind of for the aforementioned mentions, like all that drama, all of that nonsense, and the always resetting the timeline and all that stuff. I have shifted. If I do read comic books, it's almost never DC or Marvel, and so I would agree. I wouldn't be surprised if DC Comics. And I don't know about Marvel, but
that brings up a really interesting point of Marvel is actually still financially, when it comes to comic books, still doing worse than DC.
Jeez, dude.
Both of them are doing not nearly as well as the companies would like. And so if you're a Marvel fan going, well, sucks for DC, It's like the Phantom Menace, of all things said, as horrible as that is to say. If one thing happens to you, form a symbiotic circle. If one thing happens to one of you, surely it'll happen to the other. If you're an idiot Marvel fan out there saying that's all right, DC can collapse, you got to realize if DC collapses, Marvel Comics isn't far behind. If you are a comic fan in general, you should want DC Comics to survive because competition breeds excellence. If DC Comics ceases to exist, Marvel has no reason whatsoever to keep telling good stories. There is no motivation whatsoever. Look at WWE. As soon as WCW collapsed, they got lazy and complacent with their storytelling for close to 2 decades. Still an issue that they face to this day because no one's going to challenge them. Challenge and competition is a healthy thing for business. And if one of them goes out of business, that's a very bad thing. Yeah. Marvel is not far behind if DC collapses.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me of how that will affect the movies, how that'll affect, what stories are being told. Because, people do need to know that there's a whole world of comics outside of DC and Marvel. Some, in my opinion, that would rival even be better than those. But still, DC is basically the one that started it all. So it's like, I think a little tough.
My immediate reaction, if DC does collapse, of right now we'll be really, really sad, but over time it'll get worse because they'll go the way of any of those early pulp comics characters of like Dick Tracy or the Phantom. You'll have a handful of people that know them, but those people are dying off, and those characters will soon be forgotten. These characters are too good to be forgotten, and I rejoice that Dan Didio is gone because now I can finally get Nightwing back. We can maybe have Wally West back. I hope to God, but it doesn't seem like it's going to happen, that maybe, just maybe, we can call off the stupid 5G thing before it happens because it's not too late, guys. If 5G fails, it will sink DC Comics. And this is a huge thing. Like, I wasn't going to talk about this today because we don't normally talk about comics because it's such a small thing, but the writing right now is on the wall of DC Comics as a company is very much in danger of not being a thing anymore. DC, the brand will still exist for movies or TV or whatever else, but in terms of creating more source material, it will soon be gone if there's not an immediate fix. I've wanted Dan Didio gone for a while because he just doesn't get characters, especially like the legacy characters like Wally or Nightwing, but even some of the big characters like Superman. He's gone on record saying his favorite stories are Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns. They're so insistent on like recreating the magic of those dark 80s comics while missing the entire point of the rest of their universe. And at the point of people like you who have fallen off comics, because I remember you and I were both huge when Rebirth came.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they fixed it. And we tried our best to keep up with Rebirth. And for a while there, they were telling really great stories. But then again, just like with New 52, it was started, Jeff Johns told a great story with Flashpoint, and then Dan Didio took over. And one of the videos I watched, there was just like one of the only titles that thrived besides Batman and New 52 was Green Lantern, which 3 guesses who wrote that?
Yep.
Jeff Johns, for those paying attention at home.
Jeff Johns.
So the short term is it's great that Dan Didio is gone. This should have happened a long time ago. The long term is things that he put into effect. There still may be a trickle effect of long-lasting damage to the reputation of DC. One that, unfortunately, if there's not a fix soon, could not only bring down DC Comics, but also the entire comics industry.
Yeah, and comics has been dying off slowly just because it's not as big of a medium anymore, and that's not necessarily comics' fault is the problem. Because there's a lot of like Dark Horse, Image Comics. They're trying to tell great stories, but nobody's really picking up a comic.
Yeah, but having bad stories certainly isn't helping the cause.
Correct.
Like I said, you know me. I'm a diehard Nightwing person. You get me, of all people, like, I'll still read the Cliff Notes online of what happens in each issue, but if you get me, of all people, who will watch literally anything with Dick Grayson in it, if you get me, of all people, to stop watching because you've turned your back so much on what the ideals of not only the character, but of numerous other characters, I want to love Superman. I can't read the current Superman because Brian Michael Bendis has crapped on that legacy so much. And guess who hired Brian Michael Bendis and paid him way too much money to come and write for DC? Dan Didio.
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully, yeah, I always want the best, but, we'll see what happens, man.
Yeah, it makes me just go, okay, I need to collect up as many comic books as I can right now because comic books will die before Blu-rays do at the rate we're going.
Yep. I wouldn't be surprised.
All right, let's start shifting to more positive news, shall we?
Yeah, totally.
And there's nothing more positive than this, admittedly, rumor. But to me, while some other people have been quick to dismiss this, to me, there's absolutely fire where there is smoke because the pieces are starting to fall in place for something. So, last week, I was just scrolling through Twitter and someone posted something very interesting that got picked up by a lot of other people, that there's an official casting sheet that basically was just like, we need... there's a big action movie filming mid to late March in Glasgow. So it's clearly the Drew McIntyre documentary.
Yes.
Which, yes. But it's like, we're filming for this big action movie. We're going to be filming in mid-March to late March. We are looking for circus performers like fire eaters, fire dancers, whatever else. We just need extras with circus experience. And my mind immediately goes, oh, head tilt. Like, I think the gift that I shared on my social medias is the perfect response. If it was a dude talking and then he just pauses and just, wait, say what? Like,
say that again? Yeah.
Pieces slowly come together because
there's a lot of implications from that. There's
a lot of implications. So what do we mean by this? As we know, we'll talk a little about this before. I wasn't going to talk about it, but we can talk about it. The Batman is shooting right now. We got our first official look last week. And like I said, we're getting this look because they're about to film outside and we're going to get our first official look at it. But they want a good in-studio, in a protected area before we see it out in the wild. And now we have seen it through some leaked pictures of him riding a bike. And how good does that look?
I think it looks great. I've heard a lot of people kind of crap on it a little bit.
The only thing I'm crapping on is the gauntlets. Those look weird.
I get them though. Because I'm looking at it from his like ninja background. If they keep that, whatever, it looks like a typical just, you have the metal on there, and then I wouldn't doubt if you could pull those out and throw them.
Yes, Batman's riding a motorcycle. Looks very Batman Zero Year. Just look up Batman Zero Year. There's going to be a picture of him on a motorcycle, and it's almost like perfect, spot on. But we talk about the Batman because we said that it's been filming, and it will be filming for at least a little bit in London, which is not that far from Glasgow. So, where does this circus thing come in? Oh, yeah. A little birdie told me that my favorite character of all time hails from the circus. To me, that where there is smoke, there is fire. And this, to me, is the most conclusive proof. And some people are just like, you're leaping to conclusions. This, to me, is the most official, hints. Not official confirmation, but most official hints of an appearance of, I will not say Robin yet. I will say this, to me, at least confirms the appearance of Haley Circus, and if nothing else, the Flying Graysons.
Yeah, I see this. If it does happen, I can see it happening, them hinting at it at the end of the movie. But that's about it.
I disagree, actually. I think there's going to be an extended scene, not like just an end credits, but like an actual. If it was an end credits, I think they could have kept that secret better because those are typically filmed much later. I think there's going to be an actual like sequence at Haley's Circus, just not with Robin, and the end credits might be with Dick Grayson or an allusion to Dick Grayson, and then he'll either show up in the end credits or show up in the next movie.
Okay, I can see that.
Like an actual set piece is at a circus.
Yeah, I can see that.
But the pieces just seem to fit of that's so specific that you would ask extras with circus background for an action movie that just happens to be filming not that far from where the Batman is currently filming. And I remember watching the John Campea show, and he's just like, no, this doesn't sound right. If they had cast Robin, we would have known. I'm not saying they're casting Robin. I'm saying they're casting for Haley's Circus. There's a big difference there.
And John's not necessarily correct. If they had cast Robin, they don't have to give us that information.
Oh,
like,
no. Did we know that J.K. Simmons was in Far From Home before that movie came out? No, they hid that incredibly well. I think we can have a Robin cameo that's hidden extremely well. I think this whole production, it's been so focused on Batman, but there have been a lot of rumblings that there will be a Robin appearance. And I know we've talked about it numerous times on the show because it's me. But this really just adds more, at this point, gasoline to the fire that Robin will be in this, or at least the stage will be set for his parents to fall to their death.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily need to see them die because we've already seen Flying Graysons like die on camera in Batman Forever. Maybe we'll do it better this time, but I don't know. I think this leans very, very heavily into we will see some circus, we will see some Flying Grayson reference.
You know, it'd be great is if what's his name? Joseph Gordon-Levitt played the dad.
He plays John.
Yeah, he plays the dad of the Graysons.
That would be interesting. I don't know. I think
it might take
be too distracting, I think.
Yeah.
Because then you'd have all these like film theory out there going, they're connected.
No,
and Joaquin Phoenix's Joker is the Joker for these movies.
I mean, I wouldn't mind that.
Give it time.
To be honest,
there is some Joker rumors out there that I've heard for this movie that I'd be like, that seems like a cop out, but whatever.
Yeah, I doubt it. We'll see. What else we got, man? What else we working with this week?
We got some late breaking news in terms of like this happened a couple hours before recording. America's sweetheart, literally everyone I know loves this man, Chris Evans. Chris Evans reportedly is in talks for a Little Shop of Horrors role. So they're remaking Little Shop of Horrors, and while no one's officially attached to the film yet, both Taron Egerton, your favorite, and Scarlett Johansson have both been attached to it. They haven't just officially signed on yet. We don't know if they've signed on the dotted line or not, but there have been rumors that they've been in discussions. Now it seems like Chris Evans is also in discussions for Little Shop of Horrors remake. This time, he will be playing the dentist. So I have seen Little Shop of Horrors, the play, once. They did it when we were in college, and one of my communications teachers was the dentist, so we're like, oh, we got to see this, and he was very entertaining. So I kind of know the story of Little Shop of Horrors. How familiar are you with both either the play or the original movie?
About as familiar as you are.
I know the original role was Steve Martin.
Yes, that's about all I know as well.
But again, without I don't want to talk about some other things. I think you and I are on the same brainwave there. Without talking about some other things, I think this role would be perfect for Chris Evans.
I agree.
Because he plays a dick really well.
He does, especially for, like, I never imagined that he would be such a prick.
Like he's a really good prick in Knives Out, obviously. He's such a good antagonist for that, of just, you just want to punch him in the face. But while I hate the movie, he's a great prick in Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
No, also, yeah. And, I mean, he plays douchey really well in the original Fantastic Four. Yes.
So it's a little more narcissistic for Little Shop of Horrors. But my question is this, I'd imagine this is still a musical. That's why you would get Taron Egerton, who just did Rocket Man. Can Chris Evans sing?
I have no clue, and I'm willing to find out.
I'm also just thinking, I don't know if I could buy Taron Egerton. I'm assuming he'd be Seymour, the main character, originally played by, I was about to say Wayne Selinsky, Rick Moranis. I don't know if I could see Taron Egerton as a Rick Moranis type.
We'll
Maybe
see.
it's me stereotyping, and we're going to talk about this actor later, but you know who I would actually put in the role? Because he's got theater, musical background, and I think he can sing?
Hugh Jackman?
No, Hugh Jackman, I would much rather have him not as Seymour, but as the dentist.
Yeah.
Tom Holland.
Oh, I can see that. And
he can play scrawny dork pretty well.
Yeah, he feels young and well, and he feels like he'd be tricked easily.
And he's got that theater background, too.
I mean, yeah, that too.
Could Scarlett Johansson sing?
Yes. But here's the thing, though. I think Tom's going to be busy.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Great segue.
Yeah, no problem.
So I mainly wanted to put this in the notes so we can officially, bookmark this and be like, okay, if they haven't, we know they're lying and they're full of crap. So.
Yes.
No movie has been in development hell, well, it feels like, longer than the Uncharted movie, which has been in development hell for probably close to a decade back in the day when it was like Mark Wahlberg was originally supposed to be Nathan Drake, then this, that, or the other thing, after 6 directors later. We still don't have a director, but apparently, according to Tom Holland, when he was doing press for the Pixar movie Onward, which is getting great reviews, he said not only has he read the script for the Uncharted film, he's getting ready to film it in 4 weeks. So,
oh, wow.
They are apparently a lot closer to this than I thought. Even though they don't have a director, and we don't know any of the other cast besides him and Mark Wahlberg, ironically, this time as Sully. He has said that it's filming in 4 weeks, and he's super excited for it. He says it's the best script he's ever read, and that they take a lot of inspiration from Uncharted 4. Now, there's a lot to unpack there, and I'll get to my thoughts in a second, being the resident Uncharted person here. Naturally, it's in my name description. But, Josh, what do you think of his comments? Do you actually believe him when they said they're going to be shooting in 4 weeks? And do you actually believe him when he says it's the best script he's ever read?
All right. I'm going to two-part that. Do I believe him when he says they're going to be filming in a few weeks? I believe that he has been told that they will be filming in a few weeks because I trust Tom. After the whole Spider-Man thing, I have no reason to not trust Tom. Granted, on the flip side of that, a young actor telling me that's the best script he's ever read is hard for me to buy just because he's a young actor, and it's not his fault. I just, it's like if I told an adult, this was the best day of my life, and it's like, I'm 15 or something. It's like, well, you got some more experiences coming down the road, but I don't know if that's it. But to me, though, for Tom to say they take a lot of inspiration from from a very specific game, as opposed to being like the whole series. I feel like that he has read the full script and is very impressed with it.
I was intrigued, but also impressed when he said that it's going to take inspiration from 4, because they asked him what it's going to be like, and he said 4 is one of my favorite games. And I was talking to the head of Sony, Tom Rothman, who is a bumbling moron who should not be in charge of Sony, but he's got a long track record of idiotic choices, but we don't have 3 hours to talk about the idiocy of Tom Rothman. He's just like, oh man, I just played Uncharted 4. I love it. Man, I wish I could play Nathan Drake. And so Tom Rothman was just like, sure, let's make it happen, which I'm like, that's always a worrying sign. But I'm with you. I think it's cool that, yes, he's read the whole script and he can see the parallels. But also, a lot of people that want this movie to fail. You could tell there's a lot of, maybe it's just my bubble, but there's a lot of not only video game fans, like with the Uncharted fandom, but just people in general that have hated the casting of Tom Holland from day one and want this movie to fail, that they're just like, how can you say he's taking inspiration from Uncharted 4? That's the last Uncharted game where Nathan Drake retires. How can you take inspiration from that when he's still a kid? And I'm just going, you ignorant morons. Like a third of the game is spent in flashbacks when he's still a kid, when he's, quote unquote, spoiler alert, massive spoiler here for Uncharted people, when he still goes by Nathan Morgan, his birth name. Him and his brother are still kids at this point. So you're getting this early story of Nathan and Sam Morgan before he's Drake. And it's even before he meets Sully. So when Tom Holland says they're taking some inspiration from 4, I think that's a good thing that we're getting the early story of Nathan Drake. I want this movie to do well. I get those people that are just like, it should have been Nathan Fillion, it should be prime Nathan Drake. In an ideal world, yes, I agree that it should be prime Nathan Drake, maybe played by like Oscar Isaac. It would never be Nathan Fillion. The dude's almost 50. They want this franchise to last a while. If we had Nathan Fillion, it would only be a movie or two at best. Let's be honest. It's just the reality of it. That Uncharted fan film on YouTube is great, but it's 15 minutes, not a full-fledged franchise that they want to get off the ground. You get a little bit more longevity with Tom Holland. So I get the choice that they've made there.
And as much as the fan base loves Nathan Fillion, I personally have never really seen much.
Which is ironic because that's actually who he's based off of.
Yeah, so I don't know. When everyone's like, it needs to be Nathan Fillion, or even, and I might catch some heat for this, but I don't get the hype behind Firefly. I've watched it all the way through, and it's not that great to me.
It's that whole like distance makes the heart grow fonder, and like, oh, what could have been? I think people with Firefly live in the what could have been.
Yes.
But going back to Tom Holland saying they're taking inspiration from 4, I think that's a good thing. I choose to go into this movie with optimism as best as I can. They're still made a lot of bad choices. I do think it's a massive red flag that we've lost so many directors. I loathe with every fiber in my being that we went with Mark Wahlberg as Sully, because that's... Mark Wahlberg already has a bad history with video game movies with the Max Payne movie, lest we forget about that. But I choose to be optimistic, and these statements kind of make me a little bit more optimistic of like, okay, clearly they're filming. So I think he's filming this before he films Spider-Man. If we get word from Tom Holland saying, yeah, I'm going to go film Spider-Man, that's going to be worrisome. Because that means that this will be pushed back further. But I don't think that's the case. I am sticking with my guns when I said that when they push this to March of 2021, that will be the final delay, and it'll actually come out then. I think for right now, fingers crossed, I believe Tom Holland at his word that they will be filming in 4 weeks. That's for those listening at home, remind us before we set to record for episode 76. If they have not started filming Uncharted, Tom Holland is a liar and a thief and a bad person.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah, I more or less want to officially document it, and I think it's cool when an actor is this behind a project.
Yeah, I agree. And, at this point, anything's possible. I mean, I'm not really like expecting much of it. So
I don't need to be blown away. You would think a person that named a podcast after the franchise, who Nathan Drake is like my favorite video game character. The franchise is one of my favorite video game franchises. To me, it just needs to be okay. It doesn't need to blow my mind. If it's even on par with like the Librarian movies or National Treasure, totally fine with that.
Yeah, I would agree. It doesn't have to be.
Why didn't we get Nicolas Cage as Sully?
Yeah, but it's going to be Marky Mark. I'm sorry.
I know. But what happens if something happens to Marky Mark and he can't do it? Like someone takes a pipe to the knees.
Okay. Honestly, if you can take a pipe to the knee...
what about an arrow to the knee?
Oh, no. Stop.
Because as we've seen, the arrows are flying in Mulan.
I hate you. I just hate you so much because I can see what segue you're going with, and I don't appreciate
butter. So there's good news and bad news with this. Mostly good, but there's some bad to this. So Mulan, the live-action Mulan movie is coming out next month. So let's get the bad out of the way. I think this is a really boneheaded move on Disney's part to still be releasing this movie next month.
Mulan?
Yes, I think this is a really bad idea that Disney is just like, nope, we're sticking with our guns. We're going to be releasing Mulan March 27th. I think this is one that, due to the coronavirus, you probably should be pushing this back a few months so that way the whole market can see it. Because right now, like, probably about a third of the world cannot see this movie because it's on lockdown.
Yeah.
But that's not the main story. We talked about that recently, which actually the coronavirus is spreading to other parts of the Hollywood spectrum, as Mission Impossible 7 has actually announced today that it's delayed filming due to the coronavirus and they'll have to come back and shoot later.
Oh, wow.
But getting back to the Mulan thing, this is, believe it or not, this will mark the first live-action remake that Disney has done that will be PG-13. We now have official rating for Mulan. And I'm just sitting back kind of going, well, no duh. We've seen the fights. How are you going to PG that? Well, Narnia did it, I guess. But, yeah, there is no way this movie is going to be PG. Josh, knowing that this is PG-13, does this get you more excited, less excited? And what do you think about the release date?
I mean, I had a feeling it was going to be PG-13. I would have more issue if they were like, it's going to be R, which I'd be like, why? It doesn't need to be R at all.
No, Pirates of the Caribbean was.
No, get out of here. No, like, I don't mind it being PG-13 at all. In fact, I think it's going to add to the intensity of what the violence needs to be, especially in that, in the kind of world we're getting dropped into. I agree with the, what's it called, with the release date. Maybe push it back, but at the same time, like, I don't know. It could be worse, I guess. I mean, maybe they're kind of hoping that it'll catch some wind later on down the road. Because
like a first half, second half of like, we'll do it now, and then we'll release it a few months later internationally.
Exactly. Like, maybe they're hoping it'll catch a wind like that.
But here's where I would say I would kind of argue against it, just because, yes, it's Mulan, so it's not going to be like super spoiler heavy, but I would think the international markets wouldn't really want the opportunity to have the movie potentially ruined for them, and having it all come out not having it all come out the same day. The movie's going to be out for months, so the spoilers are going to be out there really easily.
I guess. I don't know. I think
it's hard. It's a hard decision either way for Disney to make, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if I was them, I probably would push it back.
Yeah.
But this is why I'm not an executive.
Yes, I would agree.
other thing else for Mulan, or are you ready to get into sponsors and main discussion?
Sponsors, and let's go, man. I mean, I'm excited for Mulan regardless. So, I mean, the little kung fu movie nerd in me is literally just itching to get to this movie.
Which it was brought to my attention recently. I did not even know the evil warlord in this movie is played by Jason Scott Lee, who was in the live-action Jungle Book from 1992 that I would say a love-hate relationship, but it's a sheer hate-hate relationship with.
Oh, okay. I mean, I enjoy it, but I guess it's just me.
You know which one I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I do.
I hate that stupid movie so much because I watched it as a kid, and the snake that guards King Louis is the reason why I'm deathly afraid of snakes.
I mean, I don't blame you.
That thing traumatized the ever-living crap out of me.
There's a lot of actual legitimately terrifying stuff in that show.
Oh, yeah. You mean like a man drowning by sand?
Yep.
Or a man getting eaten by a tiger? Or John Cleese?
Yeah. All right, man. So what do you have for our sponsor this week?
This is... I was talking to a friend about it at work earlier today, actually. We will go with Dr. Sleep, now available on 4K and Blu-ray. Get it with the special director's cut. I still have not watched the director's cut yet, but...
Same, I need to.
Even if you don't like horror movies or like even the original book, somehow it managed to please both fans of the movie and fans of the book, because there's way two different demographics. But even if you just like Ewan McGregor, great movie either way. So this week's Dr. Sleep, because we can't do Knives Out because we did that last week.
Yep.
Even though that's basically what's been on my mind.
I think about Knives Out quite often, honestly.
It's so good. By the time this episode releases, it'll be available on Blu-ray.
Yep.
So, this week, we will be discussing the worst movie sequels of all time, with the only caveat being there can only be one per franchise. So we can't just be like, well, any Saw movie after the second one. Night, everybody.
Dang, man. Dang, okay.
One of us has to have seen it.
Them's fighting words, but okay.
Which Saws do you think are worth watching?
2's not bad. Jigsaw's
That's why I said anyone after 3.
Oh. But even 3's pushing it.
Yeah. So yeah, one of us has to have seen it, basically. And seeing Josh's list and seeing my list, there's at least one or two that we're going to disagree on.
Yeah, the big thing is, and we were talking about this very briefly off mic. I am surprised at how little sequels I've actually watched.
Yeah, there's quite a few. I tried to do some research going into this of what's the worst sequels? Okay, haven't seen it.
Yeah,
exactly. I have no desire to see Speed 2 Cruise Control, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Or Kindergarten Cop 2. Or Daddy Day Camp.
No. Yeah, exactly. It's weird how...
And also, I eliminated prequels, or else I would have Puss in Boots on here on every list, because that movie was awful.
Well, and I was actually kind of upset because I saw Shrek 2 on somebody's list, and I was like,
no!
Excuse me? That movie is awesome. What's wrong with you?
We need a hero.
We need a hero.
Also, it gives the greatest memes of all time that Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones is just Prince Charming.
Oh my goodness. Well, and I think the joke in 2 that gets me every single time, especially now that I'm older, is when Pinocchio is chained up and they were like, tell a lie. And he's like, he's wearing women's underwear. His nose didn't grow. Or I forget how it goes. Yep. I just remember someone screaming, it's a thong.
That was, who was it? Was it one of the blind? That couldn't have been one of the blind mice, because clearly they couldn't see it.
Yeah, it was somebody, but I think, I don't remember. I'd have to go back and watch
Gingy?
it. maybe.
No, it wasn't Gingy because he got turned into a gigantic.
No, that's later though. No, yeah, it's probably Gingy.
Everything's blending together.
Yep.
That franchise got weird after a certain point. All right,
After the
I'm going to
first one,
open
what are you
up.
talking about?
I'm going to open up with my most controversial pick, at least in your eyes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Spider-Man has had his ups and its downs over the years. It's slowly starting to settle. We've had a string of pretty decent ones. While most people would point the finger at the obvious bad Spider-Man sequel, I'm actually going to go with worse. The worst, not only Spider-Man sequel, but probably the worst Spider-Man movie, period. Amazing Spider-Man 2. Yes, I put it as far worse than Spider-Man 3.
Really?
I've gone back and watched Spider-Man 3 for a 5 Good Things. I'm sure we will do a 5 Good Things on Spider-Man 3 on this podcast at some point.
Yeah.
If you take out any of the Venom parts, the movie really is not that different quality-wise from the first two. They really did try their best to resolve some arcs of, yes, it's shoehorned in that Sandman is now the one that killed Uncle Ben. But tell me Sandman isn't one of the best things about Spider-Man 3. The Goblin story arc, yes, I hate the design, but that was actually a story arc that was built up over 3 movies, and as much as it's cheesy, tell me you don't know every line of, "You're my father. I didn't kill your father. You knew that was coming, Pete." That whole fight scene is iconic, even if people make fun of the movie itself. The movie really falls apart when it comes to the Venom parts. The rest of the movie really is not that different from the first 2. Yes, Spider-Man dances in it. He thinks that's what's cool because he's never been the cool guy. And I think that's...
No, you're not wrong.
That's an interesting analysis. Whereas Spider-Man 2, Amazing Spider-Man 2, has what, unfortunately, a lot of Alex Kurtzman movies have issues with. He did the same thing. I forget what other movie he did. Maybe one of the Transformers, I forget. But he basically puts the cart before the horse. 4 or 5 movies ahead before we finish this movie. Like, this movie has Black Cat and a cameo for some reason. The creator of the Spider Slayers, Alistair Smythe, for some reason. Sinister Six tease. But you can't honestly tell me that, yes, Venom is bad. Like, really bad. Spider-Man dancing is really bad. Really as bad as the Green Goblin is a disease that is transmitted from father to son, and the father who, even though he lived to be 50 or 60, somehow the son is going to die in his early 20s from this same exact disease, and he needs Spider-Man's blood to save him.
Yeah.
And Paul Giamatti is Rhino.
Which is really unfortunate because that was one of the parts I was actually kind of looking forward to.
Yeah, the suit looked cool. I thought Paul Giamatti, okay, clearly he's a guy with talent, so he's going to have a pretty substantial role because he's a well-known and pretty well-respected actor. Nope. I am the Rhino!
Yeah.
And just, it was so bad. Plus, the biggest frustration, I was the only one in the theater that cheered this because I'm sick. At the time, I cheered because they actually had the guts to kill Gwen Stacy. Looking at it now, you butchered that death so poorly. Like, that moment is supposed to hit the gut hard of Peter accidentally killed the first and only love of his life until Mary Jane shows up. It was just a wasted opportunity. And I believe you and I even had the story pitch of what they should have done was have it at the bridge, just like in the comics, where he made the I love you out of webbing. And then as he's holding her body, we pan out to a wide shot and the I love you fades into the wind.
It would have been so much better, man. But
yeah,
I mean,
people crap on Spider-Man 3. It's bad. But it is, as a whole, it is a cohesive narrative that has some flaws in its acting and its portrayal of some of its superhero characters. This has a lot of story issues and character issues.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. And as much as I love Andrew and Emma together on screen, it almost gets borderline annoying in this one.
Yeah, it was cute in the first one. It was insufferable in the second one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you, man. I've come around to where that at least the second one, I'll sit here and be like, yeah, no, that was trash.
Yeah, the first one, I don't mind the first one. It's definitely not the best Spider-Man, but it's not the second one, I'll say that.
Yeah.
Whereas you have a superhero one that might not be on nearly as many people's lists, but you have hated this movie for a while. You've made it very well known.
I have. I've been, and it'll be.
And I've always been very proud of you for sticking to your guns on this one. Of like, I don't agree with this opinion, but I've heard your thoughts, and I think they're good points. I just don't agree with you. But I've always been proud that you like stick to your guns, even knowing that it's not the popular opinion.
Yeah, because it's not. Anyway, we'll get there. I'm going to save that one and put that one in my back pocket. I think I'm going to build to it because it is my. To me, I think
a frustrating one.
A really bad sequel doesn't necessarily mean the acting's bad. It doesn't mean, the graphics and stuff like that are bad. But like, especially when a story that's supposed to make sense with your characters and it doesn't work. Like, example, I mean, I think my number 5 is going to be Batman and Robin, and we'll talk about it at length next week. But I haven't watched it in a while, obviously, and I'll be watching it again for our segment next week. But
yes, it's free on Vudu with ads.
Yes, it is. It just doesn't work. There's so much in that movie that just doesn't work.
So I got a trick for you. When you're watching Batman and Robin, and Batman and Robin is actually on my worst sequel movies too, but if you want a trick to help you get through watching the movie Batman and Robin at least a little bit better, is picture it is a sequel to the 1966 Batman movie.
Okay.
Picture it exists in that same world and not the Michael Keaton one, because I almost put it as a positive for next week, but I'm just like, I can't. That cheats the movie. Of this Batman and Robin, people got pissed because it felt too much like the 60s one after we got the Keaton ones, which I get that. Mm-hmm. But if you look at it through the lens of Joel Schumacher trying to do a loving tribute to the 60s Batman, it actually is like scary spot on how close it resembles that old style of cartoonish Batman. Yes, it might not be for everyone. It's not even for me. I'm not defending the movie as good. But what I am saying is if you watch it back to back with Batman 66, it makes it a lot more interesting because there's a lot of shots that I'm watching it going, this is Dutch. Why is this like a Dutch angle? Didn't the original show use a lot of Dutch angles or just like some of the dialogue or the costuming?
Yeah, it was
right down to some of the heavy performances
style.
And random celebrity cameos. Coolio, anybody? That is very reminiscent of the 60s show. Granted, that is not what audiences want at the time. I get that. Batman and Robin is a bad movie by a lot of standards, and it frustrates the crap out of me. But I've kind of gone with a journey with this movie, and I will never like this movie. I liked it as a kid. I'll never like it again. That being said, the older I get, the more I understand Joel Schumacher's vision for the movie, what he was going for. He wasn't going for dark and gothic. He was going for Adam West because maybe that was the version that he was familiar with.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean,
when you have to watch for next week, go into it thinking this is a sequel to the 66 movie. Also, 66 movie had 4 villains. This one has 3 villains.
Jeez. What you got next, my man?
I am looking at this. Unfortunately, I have a lot of recent ones just because it seems like a lot of the recent trends of let's resurrect something from years ago that may have been a popular franchise, and we haven't had a sequel in a while, so let's just sequel it, and it ends up very, very badly. So
yes,
I have quite a few that are really, really bad. The most recent movie on my list only came out like 4 or 5 months ago, but is already worthy of being on this list because it is an absolute dumpster fire. Rambo: Last Blood.
Jeez.
I love the entire Rambo saga. And Rambo 4, just Rambo, is one of my favorites in the series. I was very pleasantly surprised by that one. I was in the middle of Sylvester Stallone's kind of resurgence with 2006's Rocky Balboa, which is actually my favorite of the entire franchise.
Same. So.
And then 2008's Rambo was actually really, really good. But he hadn't done it in a while. But I remember we talked about that trailer with Old Town Road, and we're like, that was actually a really good trailer. So it got me hyped. And I watched it, and it was literally a direct-to-DVD quality movie that has nothing to do with Rambo. And like all the grim, bloody violence that you come to know from Rambo is just in the last literally 7 minutes of the movie. I was looking at the time, and it's so uninteresting. Like a lot of old Rambo ones, like you can feel the kills or you can feel the pain. This one, you don't feel anything. It's just nothing, and it's over so quickly you can't even really enjoy it. It was just rough to watch. I wanted so much better from Rambo. It was just a slog to get through. Like, it was one of the worst movies of last year. I don't know if I'd say it was the worst, although there was some pretty bad sequels. Honorable mention to Happy Death Day 2 last year. That was so disappointing.
Because
I loved the first one.
It was so unfortunate.
The first one was one of the most clever and original horror ideas that I've seen in a lot of years. And the sequel just pooped the bed on that. It was really unfortunate. But yeah, I had Rambo: Last Blood was just awful. I got a couple more recent ones, but what's another one that you've got?
I don't think you'll I don't think you'll disagree with this. But Terminator Genesis is absolute garbage.
Genesis? I'm proud to say.
That's how it's spelled.
Didn't see it.
Yeah,
I haven't seen any movie since Terminator Salvation. I haven't seen any Terminator movie, since Salvation, which, okay. Moment of truth. I saw it with my dad. We both liked Salvation. I genuinely don't get the hate for that movie. I actually have fun with it.
I enjoyed Salvation as well, which is why, it's tough because I hear people say anything after T2 is trash. And guess what?
I don't mind T3 either.
I don't either. And honestly, to be quite honest, I don't see the hype behind T2.
Okay, that I'm going to disagree with. T2 is awesome.
No, it's the first one's way better. But that's my opinion. Genesis is absolute garbage.
Yeah. I will say, though, with Salvation, I will die on my hill that Christian Bale is the best John Connor we got.
Oh, absolutely.
I buy him as a leader.
I think the only negative about Salvation isn't Salvation the one with the naked Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Say what?
Isn't Salvation the one with the naked Arnold Schwarzenegger?
There's a couple naked Arnold Schwarzenegger ones, but the terrible CGI Arnold Schwarzenegger? Yeah, that was Salvation.
It's not actually him? Yeah.
Yeah, that was Salvation.
Yeah.
So, okay, that kind of segues me into one of mine. So Terminator is a beloved franchise from the 80s and 90s. I believe T2 was 92. And if I remember correctly, the original one of these movies was, I think, summer of 95. And it was one of the biggest blockbusters of its era. including having one of the greatest movie speeches of all time by one of the greatest movie presidents of all time, Bill Pullman, in Independence Day. So naturally, I was excited, for the most part, when I heard they were making another one. And then I sat down and watched Independence Day Resurgence, and oh my gosh, I can still smell the stink on that movie. It was the first popular franchise starring Will Smith to kill him off screen and then reference him in an oil painting, as the Honest trailers point out, as Men in Black would do the same later. You couldn't get Chris Hemsworth, so you get the less talented, less attractive younger brother who can't act. The frustrating decision of you had actress Mae Whitman in the original as Bill Pullman's daughter, the little girl. She is still acting to this day, but for some reason they decided to recast her, which makes no sense. Hey, you liked President Bill Pullman in the first one? Well, he's a crazy nutbag with a beard that dies for no apparent reason in this movie. You like Data, the crazy doctor? Well, he didn't actually die at the hands of an alien. He's just been in a coma for 20 years. We're going to make alien contact with a sphere ball who's going to set up a third movie that will never happen. We're going to have an alien mother fight you in the middle of the desert. And better yet, we're going to have the alien ships be piloted by humans. So it's alien ship versus alien ship. So all the lasers are the same color. So you have no idea who's shooting at who.
Sounds like you really didn't like that movie, man.
It was so frustratingly bad. And I come out of the theater, my mom and dad were just like, it wasn't that bad. Are you serious? That was trash. That was so bad. And I have someone pretending to be Will Smith's kid who is one of the worst actors. If you make me miss Jaden Smith, you done goofed, Aaron. Like, the kid that's pretending to be Will Smith's kid is so bland and terrible. Nothing in this movie makes sense. It was clearly sequel baiting of, we need to set up a franchise. Well, that failed hard because this movie is so bad. Not even Jeff Goldblum could save it, and he's like sleepwalking through this movie. Thankfully, though, there is a sequel that on my list that I did see with my parents. Heather was out of town, lucky her, that we did all come out of the theater going, well, that was awful. Like, we were all in agreement of, it's been a while since we've seen a movie this truly awful. And it is one of the worst movie sequels I've ever seen. I didn't love the original, but the sequel was even worse to Fantastic Beast. I'm talking about Fantastic Beast, The Crimes of Grindelwald. If you've been listening to the podcast long enough, you may remember my spiel I had for our end of the year wrap up for 2018 when I talked about Crimes of Grindelwald and how bad it was. Josh, do you remember that at all?
I actually avoided it because of your rant and how much you hated it.
Yeah. Oh my. So I liked the first Fantastic Beasts enough. It was fine to me. Oh my gosh. If you liked first Fantastic Beasts, like even at all, it will slap you in the face how much it does not give a crap about your feelings about the first one. Of like, hey, you like the characters from the first one? Well, the most charming and endearing character from the first one who had amnesia, so he didn't remember the first movie, well, that got cured because it only took away his sad memories. Nope. That's not how magic works, J.K. Rowling. How do I know? Because you taught me for the rules that you yourself established. Now, that character is drugged with a love spell by a woman that wants to marry him, so he's more or less kind of being abused. And it's not okay, and they play it off for laughs. But don't worry, that character is going to turn heel and join the dark side at the end of this movie for no apparent reason. And you know that snake that Voldemort had? Nagini? Well, she was actually an Asian circus performer that her magic trick was turning into a snake. She was best friends with Ezra Miller. It was super weird. Thought the first one had too many characters that you never knew about and didn't really care for? Well, double that and care even half as much because there's going to be way too many characters for this movie. And you're not going to care about any one of them. There's way too many annoying side plots and way too many weird extreme close-ups. I hate this movie. Josh, get me to something else before I have an aneurysm. Hallelujah. Where's the Tylenol?
Do you want to talk about how much I hate Mortal Kombat Annihilation?
Sure. That one's at least fun bad. This is just bad.
No, it's not fun bad.
Mother, you're alive.
It's, oh my gosh, it's so bad.
Too bad. You will die.
The first one, while not good, is enjoyable at least. Whereas this one, the CGI is so terrible. It takes you out of the game, out of it so hard. Like, dude, it's just, and like none of the characters are believable. None of the stunts they're doing are believable. Nothing. It doesn't work. Nothing works.
So, if you all recall, if you've been listening to the podcast long enough, in 2018, I had 2 movies that I said gave me aneurysms, and unfortunately, both of them are sequels. Yes, Crimes of Grindelwald was probably the worst movie, but there's another sequel that came out that was so butt-numbingly stupid in its plot holes of just going, oh, don't do that. Such dumb, idiotic character decisions, and I could not get behind any one of them, that you could tell me that there is worse Jurassic Park sequels, but I don't care. To me, the worst Jurassic Park sequel by far is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Oh my God, you made human clones.
It's bad. I'll agree that is bad.
The whole movie, okay. I didn't even notice this the first time I watched it until someone pointed it out to me, and it just makes me even more mad. What was the premise of the first Jurassic World? That Chris Pratt was the one that cared about the animals, and Bryce Dallas Howard was the cold, emotionally distant one that viewed them as assets. Then why in the heck are their roles reversed for the sequel, with Chris Pratt the one that thinks they're just assets that don't need to be saved, and Bryce Dallas Howard is the one that views them as animals that need to be protected?
Yeah.
And then there's those weird, obnoxious side characters that don't need to be in it with the scientist, that kid that was in Detective Pikachu that squeals like a little girl.
Yeah.
And again, human clone children.
The clone twist is, I saw it a mile away.
I didn't because I was just like, no way they're that stupid. Like, she's got to be like a twin or something. No way they would do clones. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was not a good idea.
And then the moment that there are 2 moments in films that I've gotten really dangerously close to just throwing in the towel and leaving. Unfortunately, one of those is in Rise of Skywalker. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But I was able to recover and enjoy the rest of the movie. When the stupid clone girl opens the door and basically condemns the rest of the world to be destroyed by dinosaurs. Yeah, I have... I have so many issues with that. Are you kidding me? No. Just because dinosaurs look cool does not mean they should live with humans. You should have let them die, and now you should be the first one to be eaten thanks to you. And the movie is just like, feel bad for the dinosaurs. No, Jeff Goldblum is right, as he is in many things. We should not have let them come. We should not have created them. We should all let them die.
They're dead for a reason. Let them stay that way.
Well, I've only got 2 more. One that I really hate, and it's one of the most infuriating movies I've ever seen. And one that I put on this list because it's bad, but it's by no means like the worst movie sequel. But before we get to those, Josh, what other ones you got?
Yeah, I got about 2 left, and kind of actually the same situation, weirdly enough. I am one of the minorities that don't mind Marky Mark in the Transformers movies, but in no way is he the issue. However,
he's an inventor.
Transformers: The Last Night is absolute. And I know I've said this, but absolute garbage.
Is that the 5th one?
Yeah.
I'm happy to say I stopped with the third.
Yeah. It's the one where Optimus Prime gets a giant sword and they connect everyone back. All the, apparently Transformers has been on the planet since the day of the Templars. But, in the very first Transformers movies, they're all coming out of the sky for the first time. So, okay, whatever.
Michael Bay doesn't care about his own continuity.
He doesn't. And there's been, I don't mind the Transformers movies. But this was like one of the first times where I sat in my chair and went, I don't know what's supposed to be happening, but there's a lot of explosions.
Everyone craps on 2. I don't think 2 is that bad. I think it was the sign of things are getting bad, and they went with each progressive installment. It got worse and worse. Yes. So yes, 2 is bad, but like you said, they got worse. So 5 is absolutely the worst until Bumblebee saved the franchise partially. Which
is weird in that Bumblebee is the most lovable character of all of those. It's wild to me. But 5 is just
ironically, one of my sequels is also a 5.
Oh yeah.
This is the one that I don't think is the worst movie ever made, but it's definitely the weakest of one of my favorite franchises ever, Rocky. You forgot there was a Rocky 5, didn't you?
I just ignore that it exists, honestly.
Oh, yeah. Same. I bought the DVD set that had the first 5 before Rocky Balboa came out, and I actually gave Rocky 5 away for a white elephant. Along with George of the Jungle 2 and Super Baby Geniuses 2.
Okay, Super Baby Geniuses didn't need to happen in the first place, let alone a second one.
Also, I can't even give it the honor of being on this list at all, but Super Baby Geniuses 2, just for existing and having a 1% on Rotten Tomatoes. But Rocky 5, it's that one that everyone forgets happens. It's the reason we have Rocky Balboa, because years after it came out, Sylvester Stallone was just like, you know what? I'm really not happy with that being my final chapter of the franchise. And he's right. 5 is bad. Hey, let's have some family drama with my son. I get that you want to have your own son in a movie. That's really, really cool. But Tommy the Machine Gun is the most boring antagonist in the entire Rocky saga. And everyone always just remembers it as, is that the one that ends with him fighting in the street?
Yep.
Which I'm just you set up in the first 10 minutes of this movie a big plot point of Rocky has to retire. That's why he's a coach for this whole movie of he can't fight because he's got severe brain damage at the hands of Ivan Drago, which gets completely forgotten about for Rocky Balboa because they forgot this movie, which is fine. Actually, no, they didn't, because 5 is the reason why he's broke and lives at the house that he does in Rocky Balboa.
Yep.
It's weird. But he fights in the street, which... Correct me if I'm wrong there, Brohim, but isn't street fighting more dangerous than boxing?
No.
He's getting thrown into a truck. And getting... And he's bare knuckle fighting. I'm I'm sorry. Is that not more dangerous than boxing?
No.
And he has this dramatic stand up and punch somebody. It's okay. And the part that still annoys me to this day. So Tommy the Machine Gun has a manager that's supposed to be kind of like a Don King knockoff, with the big hair and everything. And he's been a smug jerk the whole movie. And he's just touch me and I'll sue. And Rocky punches him square in the face and goes, for what? And even as a kid, a teenager watching this for the first time, I'm going, he could sue you for assault. He could sue you for a lot of things right now, idiot.
Yeah.
That's a cool line to be what are you going to sue me for? If you punch a grown man in the face who has done nothing legally wrong against you, he could sue you for a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah. It's not exactly
Rocky
the
5
smartest
is just,
thing.
although tease for we will be doing Batman and Robin next week. We're already contemplating the week after because our creative juices are flowing now. I pitched an idea to Josh earlier today, and let's just say we want to do good scenes in bad movies. And Rocky 5 may reappear on that episode, not to give too much away.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
One of the best scenes in the entire Rocky franchise, believe it or not, is actually in Rocky 5.
I mean, I'm already
Weirdly
thinking
enough.
of scenes. I'm already thinking of other scenes, so that involve bears.
Yes, I'm already thinking about scenes too. I'm very excited to talk about that one. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Josh, crowning achievement.
Yeah.
We'll get to our least favorite sequels or worst sequels ever. Yours is a controversial pick.
It is, and I think I'm gonna get some heat with some of y'all nerds on this. But I absolutely think that Dark Knight Rises is a terrible movie.
And to be fair, this is not one of those that Josh is like kind of been anti the mainstream thought of just like, it's popular, so I'm going to be anti it. No, you've actually hated this movie from day one.
Yeah, I hated it the moment I saw it, yeah.
I remember when I first met you, our freshman year, that was still in theaters because I saw it a couple times on my own and remember talking to you about it, and I was like, really? You're the only person I've met that hates it. So I remember even from the get-go you hated this movie.
Oh, yeah, dude. Okay, first of all, how are you going to, regardless of the fact of Bane's design, whatever, we'll just not even talk about that. But you're going to build this guy up as a total badass the entire movie only to just kind of kill him off and not kind of, and just be like, oh, it wasn't even his plan. Oh, how are we supposed to believe this guy can be a mastermind if all of a sudden...
Captain Friendzone?
Yeah, like, get out of here, you crazy person. That's not how that story works. You can't do that. And, like, the fact of the matter is, despite, we won't even talk about the fact how it doesn't make sense that Batman can get from one side of the planet to the other in the matter of a day with no plane, or the fact that his back gets healed like overnight. Not going to talk about that. Let's talk about the fact that I can literally summarize the whole plot of the movie into like one sentence. I don't want to be Batman anymore, but I'm going to be Batman. So let's start to work towards being Batman. Okay, I'm Batman now. Yay. Okay, cool. Oh no, I broke my bat. I can't be Batman anymore. Okay, I'm going to be I want to be Batman again. All right, I'm going to work towards being Batman. Okay, I'm being Batman again. Yay. And now I'm going to fake my death so that I don't have to be Batman.
I will say, like Rocky 5, though, if we're considering... I like Dark Knight Rises a lot more than you do. I really like it. I like the entire trilogy. Yes, it's the weakest of the three for me, by far, but I still enjoy it. But if I were to consider it a bad movie, I would have another moment for sure that would be on that great scene in bad movies. Actually, like my favorite one of my favorite moments in the entire trilogy rests in Dark Knight Rises, actually.
Yeah, but I just... it's not... I'm not going to sit here and be like, it's a bad movie, but it's a terrible sequel.
See, and even that I'll fight you on, just because Christopher Nolan tried to bring the whole trilogy together in a cohesive way, and there's certain thematic elements from Batman Begins that I think he tied really, really well together that I'll save for that great scene in bad movies. But I think I think you're right. It's a bad sequel to Dark Knight, but it's a fantastic sequel to Batman Begins.
I would agree with that. I'll give you that. If it came after Batman Begins,
if you watch those back to back, they're pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think I would have as much of an issue, but the emotional growth that Bruce goes through in Dark Knight Rises puts him in a different place, a much more honorable place than it does when Rises starts. He's kind of like this terrible, what's the word I'm looking for? Like hermit, and that's also crippled. Like it doesn't make sense. Like I understand, but like how are you
I never understood that doctor scene where he's just like, you have no ligaments in your knees, you're all banged up. I'm like, he hasn't even been Batman for 2 years.
Yeah, like, and there's nothing for us to see that causes us to be like, oh, okay, yeah, those injuries make sense. Like if we saw him, like, I don't know, get like rough, like at the beginning of Batman Beyond, the television show. Like he is old, he's beat up, and then he almost has to kill somebody with a gun because his life depends on it, and that scares the crap out of him, and so he doesn't want to be Batman again. That makes sense. Yeah. But like just for him to be like, for Bruce Wayne to be like, man, I hurt when I wake up, I don't want to do this Batman thing anymore. Like that doesn't make sense to me.
So, my least favorite sequel or worst sequel I've ever seen. A little bit of context here. This is part of one of my favorite and most cherished franchises to me that I discovered later in life. It is a sequel to a movie that I don't love, but there's some parts of it that I like. It's kind of similar to Fantastic Beasts in that regard, but I think I like Fantastic Beasts as a first entry more so than this first entry. And it's hard because I don't want to compare it to that first film, but also the previous other films in its saga. It's hard to not think about those other movies. I can't hide it anymore because it's hard to explain without talking about the movie itself. So naturally, if you haven't figured it out by now, talking about Rob Zombie's Halloween 2.
Oof, I've had a feeling that this was going to come up.
I'm okay with Rob Zombie's first Halloween. There's some issues that I have with it. A lot of issues. It's a Rob Zombie movie, for sure. But at the end of the day, there's some parts of it that I think work pretty well. Everything and the kitchen sink absolutely goes off the rails in the second one. Oh my gosh, did they give Rob Zombie carte blanche to do whatever the heck he wants. And he takes this to some weird places. Like really weird. So some people complained that the first Rob Zombie Halloween felt too much like it relied on the mystique of eliminating the mystique of Michael Myers and explaining why he's evil, and then more or less just creating the original shot for shot in the second half. This one, it's Rob Zombie, but it sure as heck ain't Halloween. So, Josh, what are the iconic staples of Michael Myers that you know off the top of your head?
The kills, specifically the one that I remember where he pins the kid up onto the wall.
Okay. What else? Like, when you picture Michael Myers, what do you picture?
The mask, and I picture him walking really, really slowly, but somehow always keeping up with everyone.
So, what happens then in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 when Michael Myers himself spends most of the movie with his mask more or less deteriorating and barely even on his face, to the point that his whole face is exposed for most of the movie, and he looks like either Daniel Bryan or Bear freaking Grylls. He's got like dreads and a beard, looking more like Rob Zombie himself than the actual Michael Myers. We're going to see his face for most of this movie. Not only that, he has these weird visions of his own dead mom with a white horse guiding him, saying, "Come, join us." Why is he seeing a horse? Why is he seeing his dead mom? And also, we know Michael Myers is a silent assassin. He basically sneaks up on everybody. Then why is it that he kills Loomis at the end of this movie by screaming, "Die," and running full speed at him before spearing him? That's just Michael Myers. I haven't even gotten to the rest of the movie. Michael Myers is one of my favorite horror movie monsters, so I, of course, have big issues with that. I have bigger fish to fry with this stupid movie. Okay, people that know me know I love the original Halloween because great killer combined with a great protagonist, Laurie Strode. Jamie Lee Curtis knocked it out of the park. Scout Taylor Compton was a very different approach in Halloween 1. Well, screw that. Throw that out the window. She's a completely different character in this one. She's a sociopath. She's psychotic in all senses of the word. She's essentially just... she's Courtney Love, essentially, in this movie. She's god-awful. Just screaming obscenities, just unlikable, to the point of, after about 5 minutes, you want her dead. She's just annoying, obnoxious. Also, this movie decides to have a random cameo by Margot Kidder from Superman as her psychiatrist, which is just super weird. She's such an unlikable character. There are no likable characters. There is actually one likable character. And the only character that survived the first Halloween, Annie, played by Danielle Harris from Halloween 4 and 5, which is a nice touch. But she is brutally murdered by Michael Myers, only for her body to be discovered by her father, who holds her dead corpse while showing old baby pictures of her from Halloween 4 and 5 for some reason. That looks like a weird music video. Loomis just becomes an arrogant D-bag, played by Malcolm McDowell, who's just trying to use Michael Myers' killings as a way to get success off a new book based on Michael Myers. Goes against everything Loomis has as a character. This movie frustrates me to no end. I do not get what Rob Zombie was going for. The white horse thing, the weird magic mysticism. I haven't even talked about the coroners that run over a cow and want to do things with bodies. It's just, this movie. I've only seen it twice, and I know at some point we're going to have to do a 5 good things on this. But, it's one of those that...
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to watch, dude.
Did you watch it with us, or did you avoid it?
I think I avoided it, but I ended up watching it on my own, which is kind of worse in a way.
Yes, and because I'm a masochist,
but I remember watching the first one
and the extended cut, which both of them are trash. Oh gosh, I just can't stand Rob Zombie as a filmmaker, and I'm glad his days with Halloween are over because I've said it before. And I will die on the hill. Yes, Halloween Resurrection is bad, even though I know you loved Busta Rhymes. And Halloween 6 is bad, Halloween 5 is bad, but they will never even get close to how bad and how damaging to the franchise.
Part of that.
Huh?
You can't, no, he is the best part of that movie. You can't hate on Busta Rhymes.
I'm not hating on it right now. That's what I'm saying is, as bad as that is, as bad as 6 is, 5 is, they never even got close to how bad Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is. This is the one that sunk the franchise for, 9 years? Until Blumhouse came along and swooped up the rights and made a great redeeming movie out of it. This movie just frustrates me to no end of just so many questions of not understanding it, and just so many unlikable characters. There's nothing more I can say, but avoid this movie like the plague.
Yeah, I mean, I think the theme here for us is not necessarily that these movies are bad in themselves. Of course they're bad, but they're the worst sequels for us for certain, very specific reasons.
They hurt the legacy of what came before. Like Dan Didio, if we want to bring it full circle.
And now I'm sad.
Yep. Well, Rob Zombie killed Halloween, and Dan Didio might have killed DC and the comic industry. Well, speaking of comic industry, next week we will be back with our very first 5 Good Things podcast edition, as we're going to talk about 5 good things about Batman and Robin. And yes, there are actually 5 good things. And yes, this movie is bad, but we will suffer for it for you guys. Let us know what some of your least favorite sequels you've ever seen are. What are some of the worst for you guys? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, if you like what you hear and you want to hear more, subscribe to us on whatever audio platform you're listening to us on, whether that's iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or YouTube. And if you haven't already, subscribe to us on the main YouTube channel at Uncharted Media. And as always, stay sharp, movie guys and gals.